Assalamualaikum, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome everyone from the US and also people all around the world who have joined us today for this webinar, which is being done on the 5th of February, which is observed as a Kashmir Solidarity Day every year in Pakistan and around the world to express solidarity with the Kashmiri people who are under Indian occupation for over 7 decades. Uh, the way the webinar is structured is that I'm going to start with reading a message of the Prime Minister of Pakistan on this occasion, and then I would invite the Consul General, Mr. Abdul Jabbar Memon, for his introductory remarks, and then I'm going to invite Dr. Sadas Khan, who is a very accomplished writer and a speaker. He has joined us from Pakistan, and he is going to talk about this Kashmir dispute, its history. The title of today's webinar is Kashmir, Past, Present, and Future. So I'm going to start by reading the message of the Prime Minister of Pakistan on this occasion. Uh, Today, on this Kashmir Solidarity Day, we reaffirm our resolute support for our Kashmiri brothers and sisters who continue to be subjected to an inhumane military siege and communications blockade since 5th August 2019. The tragedy of the Kashmiris, however, goes back more than 7 decades as they have faced unabated regression and consistent denial of their fundamental rights by India. While observing this day, we salute the unflinching resolve of Kashmiris in their valiant struggle for the right to self-determination, which was pledged to them by India, Pakistan, and the international community. Ever since Pakistan, Ever since India has reneged on this commitment, it has sought to brutally suppress the Kashmiris' quest for freedom. The latest Indian attempts to further colonize illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir by altering its demography and obliterating the distinct Kashmiri identity are reflective of a sinister design to convert the Muslim majority into a minority. These changes are being carried out through promulgation of illegal domicile rules, changes in property laws, outsiders to settle on the occupied land of the Kashmiris in violation of the international law, particularly the Fourth Geneva Convention. Over 8 million Kashmiris have been turned into prisoners in their own violations of fundamental rights. Thousands of Kashmiris have been arbitrarily detained. The Kashmiri youth is being particularly targeted through abductions, incarcerations at undisclosed locations, indiscriminate use of pellet guns, of Indian-sponsored terrorism against innocent Kashmiris. There should be immediate lifting of the military siege and communications blockade, as well as rescinding of India's illegal and unilateral actions in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. All those arbitrarily arrested and illegally incarcerated should be released, and draconian laws providing impunity to Indian occupation forces immediately repealed. The international human rights and humanitarian organizations, as well as the international media, should be allowed to investigate the grave human rights situation in the occupied territory. Pakistan reiterated its call on the world community to hold India accountable for its crimes against humanity in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. India must stop its brutal suppression of Kashmiris, adhere to its international human rights obligations, and honor the commitment to grant to Kashmiris their inalienable right to self-determination through a free and impartial plebiscite and then under the UN auspices. For its part, Pakistan will remain unshakable in its solidarity with the Kashmiri people until they realize their legitimate and inalienable right to self-determination in accordance with the United Nations Charter and relevant UN Security Council resolutions. This is indispensable for. Now I'm going to request the Consul General, Mr. Abdul Jabbar Memon, for his introductory remarks on this occasion.
Thank you
for the webinar.
Dr. Saad Khan, our keynote speaker today. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. First of all, I would like to express gratitude to all my respected community members across West Coast who have joined us today despite being a working day morning at 10 o'clock. So that speaks of your solidarity with the Kashmiris brothers, and also grateful to Dr. Saad because it's 11 p.m. in the evening in Pakistan and he has joined us. And hopefully we will all be benefited from his knowledge and the encyclopedic knowledge he has on Kashmir. And at the start, I will request all the audience present here that please feel free at the end and raise as many questions as you want to raise with Dr. Saad. He will be able to respond to you and may add your value and your knowledge on Kashmir. Ladies and gentlemen, every year, February 5 is observed as Kashmir Solidarity Day to express solidarity with the oppressed people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. While the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir are suffering at the hands of Indian state for over 7 decades, however, the brutality of Indian state against innocent Kashmiris has reached new heights under the present fundamentalist and fascist Bharatiya Janata Party government, Prime Minister Modi. Since August 5, 2019, when Indian government announced new measures aimed at eradicating Kashmir's autonomy, as well as changing the demography of Kashmir by converting Muslims into minority, Kashmiris have intensified their freedom struggle. Since then, whole valley of Kashmir is under virtual lockdown. United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, several members of UK Parliament and US lawmakers, as well as world bodies, including OIC, Amnesty International, and Human Rights Watch, have expressed concern over the grim human rights situation in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In November 2019, a US congressional hearing on Kashmir was held. During the hearing, various US congressmen had criticized Indian government human rights abuses in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, which also included members of US Congress of Indian descent. Indian government has been consistently denying international media the permission to visit Indian illegal occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In 2019, it has also denied Senator Chris Van Hollen the permission to visit Indian occupied Kashmir. You may all recall that this congressional hearing in Subcommittee of Foreign Affairs was held under the leadership of our Ambassador Asad Majid Khan, and through the good offices of Dr. Asif Mahmood, a Democratic leader from California. And this was a major breakthrough so far in the history of Kashmir and any such eventful event held in USA. Government of Pakistan has always remained steadfast in its support for the people of Kashmir. We believe that durable peace in South Asia cannot be established until the Kashmir dispute is resolved in accordance with the United Nations resolutions, which both Pakistan and India had accepted. Also, let me take this opportunity to share with you some of the commitments made by none other than India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, to not only Pakistan, but Kashmir as well as the world at large. These statements of Jawaharlal Nehru are really a big eye-opener for all of us. In a telegram addressed to Pakistan's Prime Minister on October 27, 1947, he said, quote, "I should like to make it clear that the question of aiding Kashmir in this emergency is not designed in any way to influence the state to accede to India. Our view, which we have repeatedly made public, is that the question of accession in any disputed territory or state must be decided in accordance with the wishes of people, and we adhere to this view." These are the words of the first Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, in 1947 on Kashmir. In another broadcast to the Indian nation on November 3, 1947, Pandit Nehru said, quote, "We have declared that the fate of Kashmir is ultimately to be decided by the people. That pledge we have given is not only to the people of Kashmir and to the world. We will not and cannot back out of it." Unquote. Then again, he sent a letter and addressed to our Prime Minister of Pakistan on 21st November 1947 Pandit Nehru said, quote, "I have repeatedly stated that as soon as peace and order have been established, Kashmir should decide it, Kashmir should decide of accession by plebiscite or referendum under international auspices such as those of the United Nations." Unquote. In his statement in the Indian Constituent Assembly on 25th November 1947, Pandit Nehru again said, quote, "In order to establish our bona fide, we have suggested that when the people are given the chance to decide their future, this should be done under the supervision of an impartial tribunal, such as the United Nations Organization." These were those commitments given by none than the first Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru. Then at the end, in a letter dated September 1951 to the United Nations representative, Pandit Nehru wrote, quote, "The government of India not only reaffirms its acceptance of the principle that the question of continuing accession of the state of Jammu and Kashmir to India shall be decided through the democratic method of a free and impartial plebiscite under the auspices of the United Nations, but is anxious that the conditions necessary for such a plebiscite should be created as quick as possible." Unquote. These are some of the statements which Mr. Nehru made on Kashmir. In the last 7 decades, Pakistan's position on the issue has remained consistent, which is implementation of United Nations resolutions on the subject. We hope that on arrival of Biden administration in Washington, D.C., there will be increased pressure on Indian government to stop human rights abuses in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and implement United Nations resolutions. Thank you very much. Before I leave, I would once again request all my audience, please feel free at the end after the discourse of Dr. Khan, please raise as many questions on Kashmir as you wish. So thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Mr. Counsel General. I just want to share with the audience that this webinar is also going live on the Facebook page, so the people who couldn't join could later on benefit from the recording, which will be available on our website and as well as on the Facebook page. So now I would, before formally inviting Dr. Saad S. Khan, I would like to briefly give you some background information about him. Dr. Saad S. Khan, PhD, is an officer of the Pakistan Administrative Service and is a widely published writer and analyst on democracy, law, and international politics, especially within the context of Muslim countries. His diverse academic interests extend to security and military studies and urban planning and design. Dr. Khan has up till now written 8 books, Reasserting International Islam, Finding Friends Indeed, Review and Reference on Pakistan-OIC Relations, Service, Our Highest Honor, Where Military Wages Peace, Military Bands in Diplomacy, War and Statecraft, Rati Jinnah, The Woman Who Stood Defiant. In addition, his 3 Urdu books on Quaid-e-Azam and freedom movement are titled as Quaid-e-Azam Ki Niji Zindagi, Maslak Shadi Aulad, Begum Maryam Jinnah, Qaid Ki Ehliya O Hamsafar, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Daulat, Jaidad or Wasiyat. This book he has written just recently, and if you read the Pakistani newspapers these days, many accomplished writers are also writing reviews about this book. And I have even last week, I think 2 or 3 leading columnists in Pakistan have also commented on this book, and I have found it to be a very interesting book. He has given lectures at different universities, and think tanks, including at Cambridge University, UK, and Cornell University here in the USA. Dr. Khan is a hobby collector and promoter of marching bands, and chairman of Marching Bands for Peace, a forum to promote army bands. He has so much accomplishments on his CV that I'm just highlighting some of them. Dr. Khan has also been a Fulbright scholar at Institute of Training and Development, Amherst, Massachusetts, USA. He is an alumni of International Academy of Leadership in Germany. He is also an alumni of prestigious Maritime Security Workshop from Naval War College. He has also done a course from École Nationale d'Administration in Paris, and he's also been a Cambridge OSI Trust Scholar at the University of Cambridge, UK. So with this, now I would invite Dr. Saad S. Khan for his keynote talk and presentation on this important topic.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Consul General and Deputy Consul General, for a very flattering introduction. Let me. Right. So the topic given to me, I hope I will speak for about 32 minutes. And after that, if somebody has any questions, as the Consul General said, I would be very happy to answer. So today we are here to observe the Kashmir Solidarity Day with a lot of solemnity. And as you know, not only Pakistani community, but all people who love freedom all over the world are celebrating this day, observing this day together. That is the 5th of February. I'm extremely grateful to the Pakistan's diplomatic mission for having given me the opportunity to speak to you about this very important subject. So, as the Deputy Consul General has already explained, the topic would be Kashmir, past, present, and future. So the presentation today is distributed into 3 parts. One, the past of Kashmir, the present, that would be the second part, and future, that would be the third part. Look, so let's begin with the past. What happened and how Jammu and Kashmir became divided between India, Pakistan, and China, between the 3 countries. And from then we will move to the present situation. Right, so let's begin with the history of Kashmir. As you all know that the whole of India had Buddhist roots because Siddhartha, Gautam Buddha, was born here in Nepal, in the northern part of South Asia. And what is now Jammu and Kashmir for a considerable period, for a few centuries, used to be a Buddhist dominated area. Then it converted into Hinduism, and Hindu Maharajas ruled in 1346. And then after the advent of Islam, the next 5 centuries almost, from 1346 to 1819, this was under Muslim rule. And during that period of 5 centuries, a large majority of the population accepted Islam. A very famous Raja of Punjab, the first ruler of the Sikh dynasty in Punjab, Maharaja Ranjit Singh, defeated the Muslim Rajas of Kashmir and annexed the state of Kashmir into what was then Punjab. His cousin Zorawar Singh, who was also his general, captured the northern areas, which are now called the Gilgit-Baltistan of Pakistan. And we will talk about both these regions, Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan, as we move forward in the next half an hour or so. Across the river of Chenab, on the eastern side, there was a state called Jammu, which was ruled by Dogra dynasty. And there was a Maharaja of Dogra dynasty called Gulab Singh, whose picture you can see here. And he offered the British to purchase the value of Kashmir for 75,000 rupees. And the British government agreed because Punjab was too large an area for them to rule. So those districts which the Punjab rulers had captured in the mountainous regions of Kashmir were sold out to the Dogra ruler of Jammu. And from thence, that is about 202 years ago, Jammu and Kashmir became a single entity. So the word Jammu and Kashmir with the sign and in between. So the Jammu ruler actually bought Kashmir from the British administration of Punjab, and so it was hyphenated with each other, Jammu and Kashmir, for the next 2 centuries. Now the British administration, as you might know, had 3 types of states. The biggest states, there were 562 princely states as on 14th August 1947, when Pakistan and India were, midnight between 14th and 15th August 1947, when Pakistan and India became independent. So the 20 or so largest states, including Bhavalpur, including Bhopal, Hyderabad, Deccan, Bhutan, etc., were called Category A states. And then there were smaller states, medium-sized states, which were called Category B states. And then there were very small states, which were called Category C states. And usually the British government had nothing to do with Category C states. And this will become very important as we discuss the history of Kashmir, because the smaller states, the Category C states on the Himalayan region, became tributary states of the Maharaja at Srinagar, and they are what is now called Gilgit-Baltistan, but we will come to that later. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the Quaid-e-Azam of Pakistan, was very fond of Kashmir. He even went on his second honeymoon to the valley of Jammu and Kashmir with his wife. And in fact, he visited Kashmir several times from 1926 to 1944. Jawaharlal Nehru, his family was a migrant from Kashmir who had settled in UP and in the city of Allahabad. And Jawaharlal Nehru was also very much fascinated with Kashmir, where his ancestral roots lied, and he was also a frequent visitor to Kashmir. And both Muslim League and Congress wanted to have their political presence in Kashmir. When we are talking about the past, we cannot forget talking about two very famous Kashmiri leaders. There was one called Chaudhry Ghulam Abbas, a right-hand man of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who led the Muslim Conference, and this was a party which was allied to the cause of Pakistan, and Sardar Ghulam Abbas, Chaudhry Ghulam Abbas, wanted Kashmir to accede to Pakistan. On your left, you can see Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah, who was allied to the Congress, and he had to pay dearly for his allegiance to the Congress party, as we will see later, and even his descendants. His son was also Chief Minister Farooq Abdullah, and his grandson also Chief Minister of occupied Kashmir, Umar Farooq Abdullah, and his son and grandson are still in detention in the occupied Kashmir. So while these push and pull factors in Kashmir were going on, where two of the major political parties, the National Conference and the Muslim Conference, were pulling Kashmir on the opposite side. And there was a third triangular effort by the Maharaja himself. Here you can see Maharaja Hari Singh, the last Maharaja of the state of Kashmir, who wanted to remain independent. He, just like two northern other, hereditary states, Nepal and Bhutan, did become independent. So he wanted it to be the third Himalayan state, which would neither be part of Pakistan nor of India. And for that purpose, he asked both Quaid-e-Azam and Nehruji that he wanted to wait and make up his mind. And he signed a standstill agreement both with Pakistan and with India, that for 1 year, there would be no change in the status of Jammu and Kashmir vis-a-vis India and vis-a-vis Pakistan, which means that all postal links, rail links, road links would continue as they did, and no trade would be affected. And within a year, as things settled down, the Maharaja thought he would be able to negotiate a better deal with either Pakistan or with India by playing one against the other. So now the people of Kashmir and against the Maharaja. But in the meantime, Maharaja had set two conditions with either country, whether he would, about the precondition that we wanted the country to agree to, India or Pakistan, before he would make up his mind to join either country. And that was that whichever country he joins, the country would have to agree that the government jobs in Kashmir would be reserved for Kashmiri people. So within the state of Jammu and Kashmir, the people from other provinces of the country concerned, India, or as the case may be Pakistan, won't be given preference in government jobs. The second precondition was that there would be no non-Kashmiri would be allowed to own property or real estate in Kashmir. Right. So while these two conditions were being under consideration by the government of Pakistan, a civil war broke out in Kashmir, where some of the people thought that Kashmiris thought that Maharaja was cozying up with the government in New Delhi, and to preempt Maharaja's effort to play with their destiny, there was a rebellion, and there was an establishment of an Azad government of Jammu and Kashmir. Please note that it was not government of Jammu and Kashmir. It was Azad government of Jammu and Kashmir, which means the free government of Kashmir, not under the influence of Maharaja, which was established in Rawalpindi on 19 July 1947, about 25 days before the establishment of Pakistan itself. In the meantime, there was Gilgit rebellion, and those small states, like the Raja of Hunza or Mir of Nagar or Maharani of Saplu, and there were so many, Maharaja of Yasin Punyal. There were 14 small states, tributary states, which I told you in the beginning were called the category C states, which rebelled and decided to join Pakistan. So these category C states are now called Gilgit-Baltistan. And that part of Kashmir, as shown here in this map as green, is called the Azad Jammu and Kashmir. The part of Maharaja's rule directly, which has acceded to Pakistan, is called Azad Kashmir. And then there is some portion, as you can see on the north, which is under the control of China. Under 1963 March Pakistan-China Accord, Pakistan has gifted some area, about 3% of the territory of the whole of Jammu and Kashmir, to China. And in the 1962 Aksai Chin War, 13% of the area of northern Ladakh, which Chinese call Aksai Chin, was captured by China, and Indian forces were defeated. In the meantime, Maharaja and the royal family, they fled to Amritsar, which is a small city near Lahore, because the opposition forces were closing in on Srinagar. And there he signed an instrument of accession with India on 24th October 1947, following which the Indian forces landed on Srinagar on 26th October 1947. At that time, we had an army chief in Pakistan named General Frank W. Messervy. You can see him on the top right of the picture. And he was very reluctant to send Pakistani forces there, saying that since both Indian and Pakistani forces had British officers, so he said that he did not see it morally correct that British officers should fire on British officers. And so he asked Quaid-e-Azam to withdraw his orders. That delay, that prevarication by the Chief of Army Staff proved fatal for Pakistan, because the Indian forces strengthened their positions, and the irregulars fighting them were no match for regular armed forces. So actually, General Frank W. Messervy was of course sacked from his command, and General Sir Douglas Gracie, whom you can see in at the bottom right, became Pakistan's second Chief of Army Staff. And then the war started, and it lasted for about 8 or 9 months, till the United Nations introduced ceasefire on 5th January 1949 at the request of India. India took the matter to the UN Security Council, and there a ceasefire was offered to both countries, provided both countries agreed to the concept of plebiscite, that the people of Kashmir would decide their future, and both countries agreed, and a ceasefire was enacted. So in a way, the Maharaja's accession, the document itself was provisional, because Maharaja did not say that it was the final accession to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. He wanted some more time. There were two conditions set by Maharaja for that provisional accession, till the United Nations decided whether Kashmir is part of one country or the other. And those two conditions, that no non-Kashmiri would be given jobs in Kashmir, and that no non-Kashmiri would be entitled to own property in Kashmir, was consecrated under Article 370 of the Indian Constitution. And this 370 becomes very important in the past 2 years, as I am going to speak about it. The pro-Pakistan provisional government in Rawalpindi, established in 19 July, did not accede to Pakistan because of certain moral, political, and legal reasons that I am going to explain in the next slide. However, Pakistan government accepted the two conditions, that civil service of Kashmir would remain mostly limited to the people of Kashmir, and the Pakistanis other than those who are the state citizens would not be entitled to buy property in Kashmir. So Pakistan not only signed the agreement of what is called Karachi Agreement of 1949, but it also sanctified the special status of Kashmir through Article 257 of the 1973 Constitution. So India's Article 370 and Pakistan's Constitution's Article 257 give the special status to the respective parts of Kashmir which are in the control of India or Pakistan. Both constitutional provisions in the Constitution of India of 1950 and that of Constitution of Pakistan of 1973 clearly say that these provisions are temporary in nature. Now, why cannot Pakistan or any civil, democracy living country accept the accession, what the Indians call the accession of Kashmir to India? Because of 6 reasons. And these 6 reasons are very important. Because under the 3rd June plan of the Viceroy, the accession either to India or to Pakistan had to be in a free and fair manner. That the Maharaja or Nawab of the ruler of the state concerned, there were 562 priestly states, shouldn't be under pressure. So when Maharaja was in a house arrest in Amritsar, far away from Kashmir, it couldn't be said that he was free of pressure from India or from Pakistan, at least not from India. So it was not a free and fair accession that could be morally or politically or diplomatically be justified. The second thing was that accession could be signed by the state or for the state or area under one's full control. And since Maharaja had lost control even of the capital Srinagar from where he had run away, so how could he give away Kashmir to India or to any other country for that matter, which was not under his physical control? He wasn't safe in the city, in his palace, and he had run away. So how could, sitting in Amritsar, he could give away Kashmir, which was no longer his? Because in the previous 3 months, the Dogra forces had lost against the uprising by the freedom fighters. The third thing is that the 5th January 1949 resolution and the earlier resolutions, for example, of 21st April 1948, and the resolution establishing UNCIP, they had made it very clear that the solution of the Kashmir lies in plebiscite. And that's what Pakistan's stated position is. That's what the Prime Minister of Pakistan has said today, the message right out here in this webinar, and that's what the Consul General was saying at the moment, some time ago. That UN resolution is not a menu card. You cannot pick and choose some parts of UN resolution and ignore some other parts of UN resolution. UN resolution has to be taken in its totality, even if it is under Chapter 6 and not under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter. So morally, diplomatically, no country can say that we have accepted UN resolution to accomplish the ceasefire because Pakistani forces were closing in on Srinagar, and then refuse the second part or the third part of the resolution about the plebiscite. Then there is a very much established principle under international law and sanctified since the ICJ, International Court of Justice Advisory Opinion of 1974 in the France nuclear test case. And it has been again and again clarified by the PCIJ, the Permanent Court of International Justice, in multiple cases, that unilateral declarations by a state create a legal obligation. If a head of state or a head of government or a foreign minister makes a statement on behalf of a country, then it creates an obligation, legal obligation for that country, and the country cannot wriggle out unilaterally from it. So the 3 letters that the Consul General just read out from the Prime Minister of India have unequivocally, in the eyes of International Court of Justice judgments and the established principles of international law as it exists today, have created an obligation over India, which the successor prime ministers could not unilaterally withdraw from. Number 5, there is again a settled principle of international law and international diplomacy, which is called pacta sunt servanda, which means that all agreements are bound to be observed by both parties in good faith, or by all parties if that's a multilateral treaty in good faith. And in the presence of standstill agreement of Maharaja with India or Pakistan, neither country could ask him to sign an instrument of accession, and before the lapse of the standstill agreement, such a pressure was illegal, immoral, and undiplomatic. And finally, the basic formula of partition was that all Muslim states or Muslim provinces or Muslim districts have to go to Pakistan and non-Muslim majority areas to India. That particular principle was applied not by Pakistan but India itself in case of Junagadh. and in Hyderabad, saying that even the Maharaja of Junagadh was a Muslim, but since the population was Hindu, and that's why they intervened militarily in Hyderabad and militarily in Junagadh. They had, if they think that this was the basis of partition, and this was valid for Hyderabad and Junagadh, and the rest of India and the rest of Pakistan, then it was also valid for Kashmir. So these 6 legal and political arguments are so strong that Indian position is very weak when it comes to the legal position on the instrument of accession or their position on the issue of plebiscite. The constitutional developments on both sides, as you all know, that the upper flag is the flag of the Azad government of Jammu and Kashmir, which already, although it sits in Muzaffarabad, but technically represents the whole of Jammu and Kashmir. The Legislative Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir that the President of Pakistan was addressing a few hours ago today represents not only the Pakistani side of the line of control, which means the Azad Jammu and Kashmir, the AJK, but technically the Kashmir Valley and Jammu as well. And that is why there are seats to be filled that are filled in Pakistan's in the Azad Jammu and Kashmir Assembly, which represent occupied Kashmir also and occupied Jammu, and they are elected by the Mahajirin, the settlers, the refugees from Indian occupied areas who have fled the persecution and now taking shelter in Pakistan. Pakistan introduced the provisional constitution of Jammu and Kashmir in 1974, and that is the operational instrument for Jammu and Kashmir. In India, the constitution was adopted in 17 November 1956 and came into force on 26 January 1957, and that was revoked, abrogated unilaterally in 2019, and I will come to that later in the second half of my discourse. Just like Pakistan had a president and a prime minister of Kashmir, Pakistan in fact has 2 presidents, one of the state of Pakistan and other of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. India had a similar mirror position till 1965. And the Sadr-e-Riyasat, the president of the state, who was Karan Singh, incidentally, the son and crown prince of the last Maharaja Hari Singh, he was called the Sadr-e-Riyasat, president of the state. And then there was an office of the prime minister. Both of these offices were abolished in India by the Indian administration in 1965, and that was one of the major reasons that led to contributing factor that led to the armed conflict between India and Pakistan in the same year, that is 1965. The situation in India, the status remains that there was an uprising in 1947 for accession to Pakistan led by Chaudhry Ghulam Abbas, and then there were violent protests after Hazratbal incident in 1962. I can talk about these incidents in Q&A session maybe, and the present movement, which has remained unabated for 32 long years. The uprising that started in 1989 has led to 83,000 deaths so far, and the presence of 700,000 security personnel, including the Jammu and Kashmir police, the border security force, the Central Reserve Police Force, CRPF, and of course the Indian Army. And this is how they treat the Kashmiris. And 83,000 of them have died. So that was something that I wanted to talk to you about, how we came to the present day. Now, at present, there is, Pakistan has 2 parts of what used to be called Kashmir, the state of Jammu and Kashmir. One is the Azad Jammu and Kashmir, which is north of Punjab and east of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in you can say a crescent manner. This is the Azad Jammu and Kashmir, which has about 4 million population and 13,297 square kilometers. So it's nearly 1.6% of Pakistan in terms of area, and 16% of the Pakistani controlled part of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and 6% of the total dominions of the Maharaja. If the total area is counted, the one which is under Chinese administration, the one which is under illegal Indian occupation, and the one which is controlled by the Azad government of Jammu and Kashmir. So 6% of that comes to, is part of what is now called Azad Jammu and Kashmir. So it's 400 kilometers long from north to south at present, which is anywhere between 15 to 65 kilometers wide at different places in Kashmir. So under the 1974 constitution, there's a president, the prime minister. It has a separate flag, as you have seen. It has a separate Senate and upper house, which is called the AJK Council. It has a legislative assembly. Pakistan National Assembly's legislation does not extend to Azad Jammu and Kashmir unless the Jammu and Kashmir legislative assembly itself makes the law to that effect or on that matter. Azad Jammu and Kashmir has a separate Supreme Court and a separate civil service, of course, separate flag, and except those areas, defense, currency, and foreign affairs, which have been mutually agreed under 1949 agreement between the government of Kashmir and government of Pakistan that Pakistan would take care of. It has a very high literacy rate, 18% higher than Pakistan. The present enrollment rate is male 98%, female 92%, which means that adult literacy rate would be 98% within 10 to 15 years when the present school population becomes adults, and in the next census they are counted as adults. So it would be near universal education as far as Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. It has a very strong tourism potential. Many people of Kashmir, in some areas like Mirpur, etc., at least 1 or 2% from every household lives somewhere in Belgium or United Kingdom or Scandinavia, and a large number of foreign remittances, very high tourism potential. And the most beautiful thing compared to the other side of line of control is that almost no crime, no bomb blasts, no sectarian issue, no law and order problem. Most of the police are called Rangers police because they are more or less concerned with rescue duties due to continuous border violations on the line of control. And in many thanas, the only FIR in the whole year is not of a murder or dacoity or some hard crime, but of a loss of the passport or identity card document. کہ جی میرا شناختی کارڈ گم گیا ہے, مجھے نیا بنوانا ہے, تو اس کی FIR کیونکہ شرط ہوتی ہے نیا بنوانے کے لیے. So that's how the Pakistani part of Kashmir is going. But the sad part is that, for example, there were 6,200 alleged violations in 2019 alone, for which the figures are available. For the figures of 2020 would be available by the end of this month, inshallah. And 6,200 violations. And given the situation that it's a long, narrow strip within 15 to 65 kilometers of the line of control, means that 1 million of the 4 million people of Azad Kashmir live within 10 kilometers of the LOC, which means within artillery range. 17 out of 29 Jammu Kashmir Legislative Assembly constituencies lie on LOC. And then there were one major challenge that Kashmir faced was a natural disaster, the earthquake of 2005. Otherwise, Kashmir is something like a paradise on earth and one of the most beautiful places in South Asia and probably the whole world. It's very rich in culture, very rich in cuisine, very rich in music. And because of, as I said, very high literacy rate and high remittances, this is how Kashmir, the free Kashmir looks like at present. And this is Jammu and Kashmir Police Band, Muzaffarabad Police Band on the right. On the left, it's a view from the PC Muzaffarabad, Pearl Continental Muzaffarabad, the night sky of the city of Muzaffarabad. Before we move to the present, let me talk a little about Gilgit-Baltistan, because 5/6 of the territory of Maharaja's dominions that are allied with Pakistan is Gilgit-Baltistan. 1/6 is Kashmir. Azad Jammu and Kashmir only 13,000 kilometers, but 72,971 kilometers of what I told you were category C princely states, small princely states, not directly ruled by Maharaja himself, but for their relation with the British government, they had to go through the court of Srinagar. So area-wise, it's almost 1/10 of Pakistan, the area of Gilgit-Baltistan. But population is so small, 1.4 billion, 1.44 million, 14,40,000, which is probably 1/10 of the population of city of Lahore. Administrative development in Gilgit-Baltistan has taken place, which has climaxed under the Gilgit-Baltistan Self-Governance Ordinance, where they have a separate governor, separate chief minister. They have their legislative assembly, their high courts, their supreme courts. It's also gateway to China and therefore gateway to CPAC. And of course, it has slightly different culture from Azad Kashmir, but there are certain very strong points like gender equality, especially among the Ismaili community, The first governor, Shama Khalid of Gilgit-Baltistan, had also been a woman, and a very rich tradition of marching music, road infrastructure. You can see on the right, the Karakoram Highway, which is also called the eighth wonder of the world. And on the left, you can see the Baltic Fort, one of the most beautiful forts in Yemen, in Gilgit-Baltistan area. Now come to the third part, which is under the administrative control of India. India lost 38% of Jammu and Kashmir to Pakistan, where only irregulars were fighting against regular Indian troops. I told you that Pakistani forces presence there was delayed because of certain opinion of the then Chief of Army Staff, who was then sacked, who was a British officer, of course. India was also badly defeated in 1962 war with China, and 16% was lost to China. So India is already, with the Pakistan-China axis, a minority stakeholder as far as Kashmir is concerned. So they have now 12 million population with 68% Muslims in the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, India's state of Jammu and Kashmir is divided into three parts. For example, Kashmir. Most of the violence and the freedom struggle is the strongest in what is called the Kashmir Valley, because the Kashmir mountains, which are under the government of Free Government of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, based in Muzaffarabad, the valley is under Indian occupation, which is only 15% of the area under Indian control. 15% of the state under Indian control, but 53% of the population. So this 53% of the population, out of 12 million, it's about 6.5 million live in this valley, very congested area, and 94% of the valley, the people of the valley are Muslims. Then there is Jammu. It's 25% of the Indian occupied area, but only 43% of the population. Sorry, I have written 43, 45, it is 40, yes, 45. 45% of the population, and the Muslim ratio of this 45 is 34%. And finally, there is a big Ladakh region, which is 58.8. I have managed to whole number kar diya. It's nearly 60% of the area, where only 2% of the population live, 250,000 people, of which almost half are Muslims. So if we count 94% of this 53%, and then 34% of this 45% Jammu population, and almost half of this 2%, Muslims come to almost 68%. And the scenes you can see day in and day out are part only of the Muslim majority areas of Kashmir. And in Pakistan or any other civilized country, if this treatment is meted out on animals, the United Nations and many other international organizations would come to the rescue of the victims. But this is something that happens day in and day out, and there is no need to show more slides, because we all know that. And this is a question mark on the world conscience. So before I end, maybe I will take another 5 or 6 minutes. Sorry for that. So Indian actions in occupied Kashmir, the Article 370 of that gave the two guarantees to the people of Kashmir that the Maharaja had made a precondition of the so-called instrument of accession. Although that instrument was morally wrong, and I have given the 6 reasons in the opening slides. But even if it was true, it was based on 2 conditions. And if Article 370 is abrogated unilaterally, it means those conditions have been withdrawn unilaterally, which means that instrument of accession, even if it was there, has become infructuous. So that is something very important, because now the issue has moved beyond the issue of human rights. Much water has flown under the bridges. International law has moved on. What is happening here in this slides is not a violation of human rights. It's a torture out and out. So now the international legal regime of crimes against humanity, the Convention Against Torture, CAT, the Convention Against Genocide, those are the things that Pakistan needs to emphasize on. Not the UDHR, because the things have moved beyond simple violation of human rights. This is not a violation of human rights going on. This is an ethnic cleansing going on. So if Gambia can go to the International Court of Justice against Rohingya Muslims on the other part of the globe, so Pakistan has a much stronger case. So in the last 2 or 3 minutes, I will talk about the future. Was Article 370 temporary in nature? Yes, it was. But it does. What happened on 5th August 2019, that temporariness has ended. 5 अगस्त 2019 को क्या हो गया था जिसकी वजह से 370 खत्म करना पड़ा? Was the Kashmir issue resolved? No, it was not. It could not be arbitrarily removed any one day of the whole calendar whenever the government at New Delhi felt like. It was provisional only in the sense that Kashmir issue is yet to be resolved. And when it would be resolved, of course, Article 370 would be infructuous. So it could only be revoked by the people of Kashmir or their assembly or their government, because the very constitution of 1956 had been made by the people of Kashmir. What India did was that they dismissed the government of Madam Mufti on the right and appointed a governor sent from Delhi, and the Delhi's representative governor in Srinagar, on behalf of the people of Kashmir, whom he had no right to represent, asked the Indian president to abrogate the special status of Kashmir, which he did. So this is totally ridiculous. This is a violation of India's own constitution. But one thing that we have failed to highlight is that any international agreement is binding on both parties in good faith, pacta sunt servanda, which is the basic principle of international relations and international law and international morality and international civility. And what does Simla Agreement say? The two countries are resolved to settle their differences through peaceful means, through bilateral negotiations or any other peaceful means mutually agreed upon by them. So when Indians say that UN ka role khatam ho gaya hai because Pakistan has agreed that there will be bilateral negotiations only, it is not the case. It's bilateral negotiations or any other peaceful means agreed to between the parties, which includes UN Security Council. Because United Nations Charter itself says that every issue should be settled in the first place bilaterally, and if it is not, you fail to solve it bilaterally, then come to us, then come to the Security Council. So this is not a different wording. This is wording which is there in every peace treaty between North and South Cyprus, between North and South Ireland, between North and South Korea, and that is why between North and between Pakistan and India on Kashmir over Simla dispute. So Pakistan has not foregone the option of going to United Nations. The exact wording says bilateral negotiation or any other peaceful means. Pending the final settlement of the problem, neither side shall unilaterally alter the situation. That's again Simla Agreement. Not my opinion, not anybody else's opinion. That's a solemn agreement signed between Pakistan and India. So India could not, cannot legally, morally, and under this treaty unilaterally alter the situation of Kashmir by abrogating Kashmir's constitution. And both sides shall prevent all acts detrimental to maintenance of peaceful and harmonious relations. Again, Simla Agreement, which they have violated. So what has happened is that India has sleepwalked into a political and moral and diplomatic abyss. India says Kashmir is an integral part of India. In Hindi, or they say Kashmir India ka toot ang hai. Where did this word atut ang come from? It was not written in the Constitution of India in 1950. Even in Pakistan Constitution of 1973, it does not say that Pakistan, Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of Pakistan. We only say under Article 257 in our Constitution that its status will be determined by the relevant UN resolutions. So the word atut had come from Article 3 of the Constitution of Occupied Kashmir that Indians have now abrogated. So the only legal link, the only document that said that Kashmir is a part of India has been abrogated by India itself. The red flag has gone away. The special position of Kashmir has gone away, the occupied Kashmir, and the constitution has gone away, which means whatever legal or moral claim they had, that there was a document linking Jammu and Kashmir with India, they have disposed it of themselves. So what will happen in future? If everybody comes to Kashmir to get government jobs, and the largest source of employment in occupied Kashmir is government jobs, unlike in Pakistan where there are so many other things, then joblessness and alienation of Kashmiri youth will increase. The vulnerability of Hindu population when more and more people from other parts of India would come and buy property in Srinagar would increase. And the way they have, relegated the status of Jammu and Kashmir from being a state to a mere union territory directly controlled by Delhi means that all promises of India, all they are called states in India, would be afraid of, the central government, whether the democracy. So is Kashmir's, destiny with Pakistan? Likely so. So the New Delhi government has moved into a cul-de-sac of their own choosing, of their own creation. The abrogation of Constitution of India is a violation. The abrogation of Article 370 is a violation of the Constitution itself of India and of the Simla agreements and of the UN resolutions. No Kashmiri leader, from Mehbooba Mufti to Umar Abdullah to Farooq Abdullah, can now stand before their people defending India's actions. So those political leadership who had their fortunes with India, they have left them speechless. उन्होंने तो अपने allies के नीचे से ही कालीन खींच लिया. महबूबा मुफ्ती वोट नहीं ले सकती है, वो क्या कहेगी कि इंडिया ने हमारे लिए क्या किया है? ये स्पेशल स्टेटस भी तो छीन लिया है. So all legal linkages and bridges with Kashmir have been destroyed. So that's how the situation stands now, and that's how I see the future. So the house is open for questions, if any. That's all that I had to say.
हमने सबको अब अनम्यूट कर दिया है और फील फ्री और सवाल पूछें डॉक्टर साहब से जो भी पूछना चाहता है. मैं इसको इसलिए एम्फसाइज करता हूं, हमेशा अर्ज करता हूं अपने कम्युनिटी को कि अब्दुल जब्बार मेमन या डिप्टी कौंसल जनरल या दो अफसरान इस कश्मीर के इशू को इतना स्प्रेड नहीं कर सकते जब तक ये कम्युनिटी जो है वो इसमें वेल वर्स नहीं हो सकती, वेल रेड नहीं है, वेल इंडाइटेड नहीं है, उनको ट्रू पर्सपेक्टिव का पता नहीं है, तो वो अपने इंटरलॉक्यूटर से या अमेरिकन कम्युनिटी से या इस इशू पे यानी कि कंक्लूसिव डिस्कशन नहीं कर सकेगी. तो मैं हमेशा इनकरेज करता हूं कि मेरे कम्युनिटी के लोग इस पे जितनी भी इनलाइटमेंट और जितनी भी नॉलेज गेन करें. और हम खुश नसीब हैं कि आज हमारे पास डॉक्टर साद खान साहब हैं, तो आपके सारे कंसर्न्स और आपके सारे इश्यूज, क्योंकि आप जब ये सारी चीजें कर लेंगे, अपने आप को इक्विप कर लेंगे, तो आगे अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह इस काज को जो हम सबकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, स्पेशली पाकिस्तानी ओरिजिन अमेरिकन की, कि हम इसको आगे ले चलें. तो बराए मेहरबानी फील फ्री और रेज क्वेश्चंस.
मेरा एक सवाल ये है जनाब डॉक्टर साहब से, इस होल सिनेरियो में कश्मीर के इशू में गुरदासपुर की इंपॉर्टेंस क्या है? व्हाई गुरदासपुर गिवन टू द India, as there was a majority of the Muslim area there, and that is where you have a block. That's if Pakistan got the Gurdaspur, then India is very difficult to occupy the whole Kashmir.
With due respect, I have a different perspective on the issue of Gurdaspur in particular, because Indian forces did not go to Kashmir through Gurdaspur. They were airlifted there. Because they didn't want to go by road and waste another 12 or 14 hours, which were very crucial for them. Gurdaspur was the border district between the East Punjab and West Punjab. और जब Redcliffe Commission बना था, तो it was headed by Sir Cyril Redcliffe, which was a person of British descent, a lawyer, a legal expert, who was known for his integrity. And both Qaeda Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Jawaharlal Nehru trusted him. Redcliffe Commission did not consist of one person. Redcliffe Commission consisted of 5 persons. 2 were nominated by Qaeda, who were judges of the Lahore High Court, and the names of the judges were Justice Muhammad Munir, who later became the Chief Justice of Pakistan, and Justice Deen Muhammad. 2 judges were nominated by India, Justice Mr. Teja Singh and Mr. Justice M.C. Mahajan, Meher Chand Mahajan, who later became the first Prime Minister of occupied Kashmir, M.C. Mahajan. and 2 versus 2, and wherever there was a deadlock, the casting vote was with Sir Cyril Radcliffe. The argument of Pakistan was that in 1941, the population, the 1941 census, the population of Gurdaspur was 50.8% Muslims and 49.2% Hindu. So it had a Muslim majority, so the district should go to Pakistan. The position of India was that there had been a lot of riots in 1947, and 0.8% majority of Muslims meant about 800 to 900 families, assuming a family of 8 to 9 persons each. And they said that several thousand families had moved to Lahore and Sialkot and Narowal and other districts, the Muslim families, and there is no longer a Muslim majority. That was the case in 1941. So that was not valid in 1947. So both sides gave their arguments, and the 5 honorable judges, to representing Indian government's interest, to representing the future Pakistan government's interest, and a neutral chairman, they considered, and somehow they came to the conclusion that Gurdaspur has to get to India. And because it was not only the population that was a mandate of the 5 honorable judges to consider, they had to consider the integrity of communication networks, the roads and bridges. ये नहीं हो सकता था कि पुल की जाने वाली साइड इंडिया की तरफ हो और आने वाली पाकिस्तान की तरफ हो. That was not allowed under the TORs given to them. They also had to take care of the integrity of the irrigation units. So had work in one country with the canal going in the other, so that there were a number of factors, and population was not the only one. In any case, when they gave Gurdaspur, which was a borderline case, to India, I don't think that any of the worthy 5 judges had any idea that this would become so pivotal to Kashmir, or they didn't even think that Kashmir would become such a bone of contention in the coming decades. And I think it was done at that time in good faith. However, to compensate Pakistan, they gave CHT, the Chittagong Hill Tracts, which was then East Pakistan, to Pakistan as a land compensation against Gurdaspur. Gurdaspur's Muslim population versus Indian population was disputed, but CHT was not disputed. CHT, Chittagong Hill Tracts, had only 3% Muslims and 97% non-Muslims. And even then it was given. So that shows that actually they didn't have any ill will. I don't think so. Or, I mean, whatever I have read so far, I haven't come to the conclusion that the learned members had any definitive, or at least the chairman had any definitive ill will towards Pakistan, because otherwise he wouldn't have agreed to give CHT to Pakistan. So that's basically about Gurdaspur. Gurdaspur would have definitely made our position stronger with respect to movement of troops. But our movement was much stronger, and a shorter route was via Rawalpindi to Murree, to Kohala Bridge, to onward to Srinagar. And that's where the Pakistani forces moved. So Gurdaspur was left on the side. Gurdaspur were in any case inconsequential to the war of 1948, both from the Indian sides, who sent their forces by air, as part of their major operations, and we who use Abbottabad and Rawalpindi routes. Even if Gurdaspur was with us, it was such a circuitous route that Pakistanis would have lost their military advantage by being in the firing range of the opposing forces. So, in my opinion, Gurdaspur has been played up more after the Kashmir has already become contentious. But when it was given to India, it was at that time not that contentious. That's my view. Naeem Sayyed sir.
हाँ जी, शुक्रिया बहुत बहुत अपना डॉक्टर साहब आपने जो है बहुत खूबसूरती से जो थोड़ी सी देर में तारीख पढ़ाई, और इट वाज वेरी गुड, सो आई रियली अप्रिशिएट दैट. और आपकी ये मुस्कुराहट तो हमेशा पसंद आती है मुझे. तो सवाल मेरा जो है वो ये है, सवाल क्या एक कंसर्न का है या जो कुछ भी है, और आपका ओपिनियन चाहता हूँ, और अगर कोई और भी हो, कि ये तमाम चीज़ें तो अपनी जगह दुरुस्त हैं कि अखलाक़ी और क़ानूनी और ये तमाम हैसियतें, और उसके अलावा कि ये हुआ वो हुआ, लेकिन रियलिटी ऑफ लाइफ जो है वो ये है कि 1.5 साल से 1 साल से 2 साल से इतने अरसे से एक तरह से कर्फ्यू में लोग पड़े हुए हैं. यहाँ पे हमें कोविड-19 में जो 2 दिन गुजारना मुश्किल हो जाते हैं, उनकी हालत ख़राब है. तो ये एक इंसानी मसला बन चुका है. तो वो कहानियाँ अपनी जगह कि ये होगा वो होगा फ्यूचर में होगा, इस वक्त एक आम कश्मीरी की जो हालत ज़ार है, तो और माइट इज़ राइट, تو اس میں جو ہے آپ کیا دیکھتے ہیں کب ان کی صورتحال بہتر ہوگی؟ یہ اس وقت انسانی ہیومن رائٹ ایشو ہے. یہ تمام باتیں اپنی جگہ، لیکن امیڈیٹ کرائسس ہے اس وقت. ایک بندہ بھوکا مر رہا ہے، اس کو کھانا دینے کی بات ہے. تو اس کے بارے میں کیا رائے ہے آپ کی؟
That's why we are here basically, because under the UN resolution, UN Charter, Article 2.4, all nations are duty bound to respect the territorial integrity and political independence of each other. And again, I quote, use or threat of use of force is totally illegal under international law, which means that the only option Pakistanis have is to highlight the issue to the attention of world community. What we have not been successful at is to play our cards right. What I think is that if Gambia, which is a very, very small, poor, least developed country on the west coast of Africa, can raise an issue of the Muslims of Myanmar, who all of them banished from their homeland, their villages burned, a classical case of ethnic cleansing, just like that happened in Rwanda or Bosnia, or for example, which is happening in Kashmir right now. And the issue was highlighted. And Aung San Suu Kyi, the state councillor, now she is under arrest after the coup in Myanmar. But at that time, the all-powerful person of Myanmar, she couldn't send any lawyers, and she had to appear in person before their lordships, the judges of the International Court of Justice. I think we have not been able to highlight the intensity and the severity of the situation in Jammu and Kashmir to the world community. I don't think that we have been able to exploit the very fact that India has violated the Convention Against Torture. So far, I haven't heard any political leader or diplomatic mission of Pakistan referring to the Convention Against Torture in reference to Jammu and Kashmir. We are still talking about the 1970 non-binding General Assembly resolution of 1970 about the right of self-determination of colonized people, which again becomes debatable in the severity of the situation that you have rightly pointed out towards. So I have yet to find out Pakistan's lawyers taking position in the Kulbhushan Yadav case before the International Court of Justice that Shimla agreement has been trampled with by Indian actions there. As you have seen that it has become an open jail and open prison. So it's a crime against humanity. And if India and Pakistan were members of the International Criminal Court, which both of us are not, then it would have become within the remit of ICC in The Hague to take cognizance of whatever is happening there. At the end of the day, in all human relations, between me and you, between any two humans, between any two nations, between any two groups and communities, it is the real politics that comes into play. So if a state is powerful, if a state is a big or emerging economy, and if European Union or United States or China or India or China or Russia think that it's more beneficial to be on good terms with the Indians because it's a larger market for their imports, for imports from their regions, then I don't think any country would be very easily convinced to lose their jobs in their industry by criticizing India. So actually, in the real world, economics always trumps politics. So what we have to do is, one is to highlight the issue at the right forums at all the time, because we are on the weaker side. The second issue, of course, is that what we can do is that we can strengthen our own economy. We are, for Kashmir would be better served if Pakistan has a much higher exports than, say, Vietnam or several other countries in the region, which were much poorer to Pakistan maybe 2 decades ago. So better governance, more focus on economy, more understanding of international law at the political leadership level, that what are the right instruments to be invoked in this case. So, I mean, there are a number of tactical advantages that we can get, that we can obtain only by invoking the right instruments of international law. Because yes, it's not necessary that every country would be swayed by moral arguments, but it's the other side of the card or the coin is also true. No country can openly say that, okay, let the people be murdered and we won't take a position. The only thing is that we have to convince at least, let's say, 20 congressmen in United States Congress to take a very, very strong position on Kashmir out of 435 congressmen, the House of Representatives and 100 senators. We would have to have at least 8 or 9 members in the European Parliament who are convinced of the justifiability of Pakistan's position on Kashmir, which probably we have not been as successful as would have created serious problems for the occupation forces. So we need to strengthen ourselves. So Ms. Noshaba Bhatt, and then Hamad sab later.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम. सबसे पहले तो आपका बहुत शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहती हूँ. I mean these platforms are very important. Even though कि बहुत सारे लोगों की two thoughts हैं, कुछ कहते हैं कि बातें करने से कुछ नहीं होता and हर साल ये बातें होती हैं लेकिन कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. लेकिन I think जब अगर जैसे भी किसी भी माशरे में अगर कोई चीज़ जुल्म हो रहा है, अगर उसकी हम नहीं बात करेंगे, उसके बारे में अवेयरनेस नहीं फैलाएंगे, तो उसकी अवेयरनेस ही नहीं होगी तो उसका सोल्यूशंस नहीं निकलेंगे. तो अभी ये कि जो आप ये करते हैं, तो हमने ये देखा कि जब से हमारी गवर्नमेंट आई है, इमरान खान ने इसको नई लेवल तक उजागर किया है, अवेयरनेस को काफ़ी ज़्यादा उन्होंने बढ़ाया है. और जिस तरह इन्होंने किया, उधर मोदी साहब ने जो है इसको मुस्लिम एथनिक क्लिनजिंग की हाइट दे दी है. अब हम ये है कि अब जो है ये अमेरिकन गवर्नमेंट जो आ गई है बाइडेन की, तो वी आर वेटिंग कि होपफुली अब इतना इंटरनेशनल लेवल तक थोड़ी अवेयरनेस हो गई है. तो आई होप विद मोर वर्क फ्रॉम द पाकिस्तानी प्लेटफॉर्म एंड इंटरनेशनल प्लेटफॉर्म, आई होप कि ये जो नई गवर्नमेंट आई है हमें हेल्प कर सके एंड वी कैन हेल्प देम टू गेट देयर फ्रीडम. एंड फाइनली मैं आपसे ये थैंक यू के साथ ये कहना चाहती हूँ कि इज देयर एनी after increasing so much awareness by Pakistani government, is there any new strategies that now what should be the new platforms in order to make it to the next level, to give it a boost? Do we have any in agenda which you can tell us? Thank you.
Not that I know of, ma'am. I wish we had, I mean, on the government's radar or the priorities of the powers that be. The forums are the same. The Human Rights Council, the ICCPR Council, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, that has an executive council that takes cognizance of human rights violation. There is a similar council on with the Convention Against Torture and their secretariat. And if we join the ICC, the Rome Statute, if we ratify, then we will become a party to the Rome Statute, which means that then and only then we will be able to raise the issue of crimes against humanity at the ICC forum, the International Criminal Court, because ICC has only 4 areas of competence: the war crimes, the crimes against humanity, genocide, and the crime of aggression. So there are forums available. What is important is that we are able to convince the community of sister nations that another country is violating those conventions, or at least the bilateral treaty, which is called the Simla Agreement. So we cannot create new forums. The forums are there, but what we can do is that we are able to convince them that violations are taking place of the binding conventions of the United Nations. Hamad Vees Khan sir.
Assalamu alaikum everybody. Thank you, and Dr. Saab, good presentation. Thank you very much. Great questions. So मेरे कुछ सवालात हैं वो इस तरीके से हैं कि obviously हम understand करते हैं कि ये issue है. Obviously 70+ years से दुनिया भी understand करती है कि ये issue है और एक major flash point है between 2 huge nuclear powers, right? So जो चीज़ देखने के लिए है वो ये है कि हम as Pakistanis और as पाकिस्तान का part, हमारा जो नॉर्थ स्टार है वो क्या है. मतलब जो एज अ पर्सन जब मैं उसे रीड करता हूँ, मल्टीपल और कश्मीर इशू स्पेसिफिक मल्टीपल आप आर्टिकल्स रीड करते हैं और लिटरेचर रीड करते हैं, सो हम अचीव जो करना चाह रहे हैं वो क्या करना चाह रहे हैं, राइट? मैसेजिंग जो है हमारी, आई थिंक कि उसमें इम्प्रूवमेंट की बेइंतहा गुंजाइश है और क्लैरिटी की बेइंतहा गुंजाइश है. हमारा लिटरेचर, हमारी स्टडीज़ कुछ समझाती हैं, पढ़ाती हैं हमें. इंटरनेशनल जो لٹریچر آپ کو ملتا ہے وہ کچھ سمجھاتا ہے آپ کو، رائٹ. تو کلیئرٹی ایک چیز ہے، وہ ہمیں ضرور چاہیے کہ کیا ہم لوگ اچیو کرنا چاہتے ہیں. سیکنڈلی جو میری ناقص سمجھ میں بات آتی ہے وہ یہ ہے کہ اس ایشو کا جو کانفلکٹ ہے، اس کا ایک آرمڈ اور یا جسے کہتے ہیں آپ فل اسکیل وار، اس کا کوئی بھی کسی کے بھی انٹرسٹ میں ایک تو نہیں ہے، اور کسی کی بھی آئی ڈونٹ تھنک کہ کوئی بھی یہ چاہتا ہے، نہ انڈیا چاہتا ہے، نہ پاکستان چاہتا ہے، نہ انٹرنیشنل کمیونٹی چاہتی ہے. تو میں لیکچر نہیں دے رہا ہوں، لیکن میں صرف یہ جاننا چاہ رہا ہوں، مجھے سمجھ آنی مطلب کلیئرٹی لانے کی کوشش کر رہا ہوں کہ اگر تو ہم لوگوں نے یہ آپشن اسٹرائک آؤٹ کر دی ہے جو، اور تو اس کو ہمیں مطلب کلیئرٹی کے ساتھ اس کو پروپیگیٹ بھی کرنا چاہیے اور اسے اسٹیبلش بھی کرنا چاہیے. بھائی وار از ناٹ واٹ وی آر لوکنگ فار، رائٹ. دس از ناٹ ہاؤ وی آر گوئنگ ٹو سالو دس. پچھلے 3 سال سے اگر ہم دیکھیں تو انڈیا اور پاکستان کے درمیان مطلب پبلک کے نظر میں تو، یا پبلک کے امیج پہ یا پبلک فورمز پہ تو ڈسکشنز نہیں ہیں، رائٹ. بیہائنڈ دا سینز ڈسکشنز ہوتی ہیں، سارا کچھ ہوتا ہے. تو یہ مطلب ہمارا ٹھیک ہے، ہم مطلب اس کو ایز اے اپنی سکسیس کو ہم کہہ سکتے ہیں کہ جی ہم پروپیگیٹ کر رہے ہیں، فورمز پہ ڈسکس کر رہے ہیں، لیکن جہاں پہ جن لوگوں کے ساتھ ہمارا کانفلکٹ ہے انہی کے ساتھ ہم بات، تو اس میں پھر مطلب آئی تھنک کہ یہ ہمیں ونڈر کرنا چاہیے اور اس کے اوپر غور کرنا چاہیے کہ جب ہم جن کے ساتھ ہمارا کانفلکٹ ہے ان کے ساتھ کمیونیکیٹ ہی نہیں کر پا رہے ہیں تو ہم مطلب ہم کدھر جا رہے ہیں. اور اس دوران آپ دیکھ رہے ہیں ایز یو ہیو رائٹلی پوائنٹڈ آؤٹ، اور سارے لوگ بھی سمجھتے ہیں کہ لوگ جو وہاں پہ محصور ہیں، رائٹ، ان اے وے دے آر بیسکلی کٹ آف ہیں دوسری دنیا سے، تو ان لوگوں کی کیا سچویشن ہے. تو یہ ایک تیسرا پوائنٹ تھا. چوتھا پوائنٹ یہ تھا کہ ہمارے ہاں آبویسلی ہمارے پریزیڈنٹ صاحب ہیں سردار مسعود صاحب، ان کی کافی ایفرٹس ہم دیکھ رہے ہیں. پاکستان کے اندر ہماری گورنمنٹ کی کافی ایفرٹس بھی دیکھ رہے ہیں. لیکن ایک چیز ایک اور سمجھنے کی بات ہے، مطلب مجھے میرے ذہن جو ہے وہ آتا ہے کوشچن کہ ہم لوگوں کے یہاں اکاؤنٹیبلٹی کا کیا پروسیس ہے ان ٹرمز کے کشمیر کمیٹی ہے، کشمیر کے چیئرمین ہے کمیٹی ہے، ایک آزاد گورنمنٹ ہے، رائٹ. ہماری اکاؤنٹیبلٹی کیسے، یا پارلیمنٹ میں یا فورم کیا ہے ہمارا اکاؤنٹیبلٹی کا کہ جی یہ ہمارے 2-3 لوگ ہیں جو کہ، یا یہ ہمارا جو انسٹیٹیوشن ہے، لیٹس سے کشمیر کمیٹی جو ہے ہماری، رائٹ، اس کے چیئرمین ہیں شہریار آفریدی صاحب. تو ہماری اکاؤنٹیبلٹی، یا اس سے پہلے مولانا فضل الرحمان صاحب تھے اور ملٹیپل پیپل اٹ ہیز بین سوئچ واچنگ، رائٹ. تو ہماری اکاؤنٹیبلٹی کیا ہے کہ یار ہمارے یہ گولز ہیں اور ان کی اچیومنٹ کو ہم نے کس طریقے سے پروگریس کیا ہے. تو یہ 4 مطلب چیزیں تھیں. میں زیادہ ٹائم نہیں لینا چاہتا ہوں، لیکن ہم تو یہ اس پہ تھوڑا سا لائٹ شیڈ کیجیے گا کہ ہم کیسے، ورنہ تو ہم اسی سائیکل میں ایک میں ہم گھومتے رہیں گے اور گھومتے جا رہے ہیں.
جی
تو اس پہ تھوڑا سا شیڈ کیجیے گا.
جی میں ڈیفینیٹلی، میرے خیال آخری 1-2 سوال ہی رہ گئے ہیں، وہ کٹھی لے کے تو آئی ول آنسر ٹوگیدر تاکہ وی جسٹ وائنڈ اپ. جاوید اختر صاحب آپ کچھ کہنا چاہ رہی ہیں؟ جاوید اختر صاحب تو آپ بتا دیے.
ہاں جی، السلام علیکم جی. عبد خان صاحب، عبدالجبار محمد صاحب، شعیب صاحب، ونڈرفل پروگرام. بہت زیادہ مطلب میری پوری لائف میں اتنی زیادہ انفارمیشن مجھے نہیں ملی. گو کہ میں مطلب ایک ہیومن رائٹس کے لیے تن من دھن سے حاضر ہوں اور پاکستان کے لیے بھی. تو میں آدھا منٹ لوں گا، اس کے بعد جبار محمد صاحب سے اسی بات کے اندر سوال بھی آ جائے گا کہ ہمارے جو ڈپلومیٹس ہیں یا ایمبیسی ہے، ویسے انہوں نے پہلے بتایا ہے شاید، لیکن وہ بریفلی اگر بتا دیں کہ ہم امریکہ کے اندر جو سپر پاور بھی ہے، ورلڈ پاور بھی ہے، بگ پاور ہے، ان کے ساتھ ہم کس طرح کمیونیکیشن کر رہے ہیں. ہمارے ایمبیسیڈر ہیں یا لوکل کونسل آفس ہے. اینی وے میں یہ کہنا چاہتا ہوں کہ یہ حق و صداقت کی جو شہادت ہے نا، یہ ہمارا فرض ہے. لیکن ہمارے علاقے کے بہت بڑے ایک رہنما تھے، ان کے 1-2 شعر پیش کرتا ہوں نوابزادہ نصر اللہ خان کے. کب اشک بہانے سے کٹی ہے شب ہجراں، کب اشک بہانے سے کٹی ہے شب ہجراں، کب کوئی بلا صرف دعاؤں سے ٹلی ہے، دو حق و صداقت کی شہادت سر مقتل، اٹھو کہ یہی وقت کا فرمانے جلی ہے. تو میں یہ کہتا ہوں، سن لو دنیا کے رکھوالو مجھ کو بھی کچھ کہنا ہے، سن لو دنیا کے رکھوالو مجھ کو بھی کچھ کہنا ہے. याद हैं तुमको सारों के दुख, मेरा दुख क्यों याद नहीं, अब तो है आज़ाद ये दुनिया, फिर मैं क्यों आज़ाद नहीं, अब तो है आज़ाद ये दुनिया, फिर मैं क्यों आज़ाद नहीं. I want to address, as a Pakistani American, as a US citizen, President of the United States, Mr. Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, और हमारे कम्युनिटी लीडर जिनके बारे में हमारे मेमन साहब भी ऑलवेज बहुत हाई बोलते हैं, डॉक्टर आसिफ महमूद साहब. आई एम ए डेमोक्रेट पार्टी का रजिस्टर्ड वोटर हूं, तो मैं इनसे हेल्प सपोर्ट चाहता हूं, या कहो कि मुझे इनसे हेल्प और सपोर्ट चाहिए. दे नीड टू प्ले देयर रोल. व्हाट इज देयर रोल एज अ सुपर पावर? एक्स्ट्राऑर्डिनरी हम सपोर्ट नहीं मांग रहे, एक्स्ट्राऑर्डिनरी हम हेल्प नहीं मांग रहे. हम कह रहे हैं कि यूएनओ के रेजोल्यूशन, जैसे डॉक्टर साद खान ने कहा, बाकी लोगों ने कहा, हम यूएनओ के रेजोल्यूशन के मुताबिक इसका हल चाहते हैं. वी वांट के कश्मीरी जो हैं उनको आज़ादी राय का हक दिया जाए, इंडिपेंडेंट सिविल राइट्स की. नाइम सैयद साहब ने कहा इतनी वायलेशन हो रही है यार, बच्चे अपना टेम्परामेंट लूज कर रहे हैं, हम अपना टेम्परामेंट लूज कर रहे हैं, हर चीज हमें मुयसर है, जा भी सकते हैं, आ भी सकते हैं, उन पे तो कर्फ्यू है. तो ये लोग अपना क्या पार्टिसिपेट कर रहे हैं? एनी एक्स्ट्रा हमें नहीं चाहिए कुछ. हम ये चाहते हैं कि इस शहर में नगमे बहने दो, बस्ती में हमें भी रहने दो, मत कत्ल करो आवाजों को. तुम अपनी ताकत के नेज़े हर दिल में उतारे जाते हो, हम लोग मोहब्बत वाले हैं, तुम खंजर क्यों लहराते हो. इस शहर में नगमे, बस्ती में हमें भी रहने दो. जब शहर खंडर बन जाएगा फिर किस पे संग उठाओगे? अपने चेहरे आईनों में तुम देखोगे, डर जाओगे. ये फाशिस्ट गवर्नमेंट इतने इंसानी हकूक की वायलेशन कर रही है, पॉलिटिकल वायलेशन कर रही है, तो ये पूरी दुनिया के रखवाले कहाँ है? बस मेरा यही सवाल है. जवाब मेमन साहब डिप्लोमेट होने की हैसियत से आप बताते रहते हैं, लेकिन मैं चाहता हूं कि ऑन रिकॉर्ड आ जाए. थैंक यू.
आप साहब, मैं 1 मिनट इंटरवीन करूंगा, फिर आप अपना जवाब दीजिएगा. जावेद अख्तर साहब, बात ये है कि एज ए डिप्लोमेट या होस्ट कंट्री में जब हम पोस्टिंग्स होती है तो हमारी सर्टेन लिमिटेशंस होती हैं. कश्मीर कास्ट के लिए हमारा जो ऑफिशियल वर्जन है कि डिप्लोमेटिक, मोरल और पॉलिटिकल सपोर्ट, वो विच वी हैव बीन एक्सटेंडिंग since 1947 until now, and we will be continuing doing so. लेकिन आप लोगों के लिए मेरा मैसेज और पैगाम हमेशा ये होता है कि बीइंग अमेरिकन सिटीजन्स, आप लोगों के पास बहुत स्पेस है, बड़ा फ्री हैंड है. आप किसी भी, क्योंकि आपका जो मुल्क है अमेरिका, वो जो उसके कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में जो है ह्यूमन राइट्स का अलमबरदार है. तो अगर आप लोग अपनी वॉइस रेज करेंगे तो हम तो मोटिवेट करते हैं, हम तो आप लोगों को इनकरेज करते हैं कि इस काज को लेके आगे बढ़े, निकले. देखिए डॉक्टर साद खान ने जो आज आप लोगों को इतनी बड़ी इंफॉर्मेशन दी है, ये क्योंकि आप यहाँ के पढ़े लिखे इंटरलॉक्यूटर के साथ इंगेज नहीं हो सकेंगे जब तक आपको उस इशू के बारे में पता ही नहीं होगा. तो आज ये एक लिहाज से बहुत बड़ी अचीवमेंट है हमारी कि डॉक्टर साहब ने हमें, हम सबको इंक्लूडिंग माई सेल्फ, मैं कश्मीर पे 30 साल से कहता रहा हूँ, पढ़ता रहा हूँ, लेकिन आज मेरी कई चीजें बड़ी रिफ्रेश हुई हैं. तो अब मैं एक और छोटी सी बात मैं आपको बताऊं कि अभी ये जो लास्ट ईयर हमने ये जो कांग्रेशनल फॉरेन अफेयर्स की सब कमेटी में जो हेयरिंग कराई थी, मैं बड़ी बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ, ये मेरे सफीर साहब का, असद मजीद साहब का इनिशिएटिव था, और यहाँ से हमें डॉक्टर आसिफ महमूद साहब मिल गए, एक जिनकी रीच आउट थी उन सेनेटर्स और कांग्रेसमैन की तक, उन असेंबली और कैलिफोर्निया के सेनेटर्स तक, गवर्नर कैलिफोर्निया तक. हमने बड़ा एक मैसिव कैंपेन हम नहीं चला सकते थे, आप लोगों ने चलाया. इंडियन ऑक्युपाइड कश्मीर के जो यहाँ लोग थे और जो पाकिस्तानी आजाद कश्मीर के लोग थे, उन्होंने एक कंसोलिडेटेड, एक कंसर्टेड एफर्ट की. हमने पता नहीं कितने ट्वीट्स, कितनी कम्युनिकेशंस हमने लिखवाई इन सारे सेनेटर से और कांग्रेसमैन से. ब्रैड शर्मन जो था वो इंडियन कॉकस का चेयरमैन था और ही वाज हेडिंग द हियरिंग इन द कांग्रेस. अब इससे बड़ी अचीवमेंट हमारी या हमारी एफर्ट की क्या हो सकती है? और मैं आपको एक बात बताता हूं, मैं बड़ी बात नहीं कर रहा हूं, ये इंडियन ऑक्युपाइड कश्मीर के जो लोग यहाँ आते हैं, मुझसे मिलते रहते हैं, वो कहते हैं सर अगर ये कैंपेन इतना ऑर्गेनाइज्ड उस वक्त नहीं चलाया जाता कैलिफोर्निया से अक्रॉस यूएसए, फिर हिल पे ये जो हियरिंग हुई, कहता हमारे 5 से 10,000 लोग उन्होंने वहां मर जाने थे, जो बच गए बिकॉज ऑफ द अमेरिकन कांग्रेसमैन एंड अमेरिकन पब्लिक रिप्रेजेंटेटिव प्रेशर्स. तो ये बहुत बड़ी चीज होती है समझने की. तो आप लोगों के लिए तो ओपन फील्ड है यार, आप लोग कांग्रेसमैन को लिखें, सेनेटर्स को लिखें, असेंबली मेंबर्स को लिखें, स्टेट सेनेटर्स को लिखें, यहाँ के इलेक्ट्रॉनिक प्रिंट मीडिया को अप्रोच करें, रीच आउट करें, इस पे आवाज उठाएं। हमारी लिमिटेशंस है, आपकी कोई लिमिटेशंस है, लेकिन गाइडेंस के लिए हम हर वक्त तैयार हैं। मैं हर वक्त मोटिवेट करता रहता हूं। आज भी एक यहाँ पे जो वेबिनार हो रहा है, जहाँ पे इंडियन जो ऑक्युपाइड कश्मीर के जो जर्नलिस्ट हैं, वो अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह वहां से अपना ऑडियो सुनाएंगे लाइव, और वो वेबिनार शाम को 5 बजे हुआ है। ये हम लोगों ने लोगों को मोटिवेट किया है। ये अछूती चीजें, यूनिक चीजें ले आते हैं कि लोगों को अवेयरनेस मिले। लेकिन जावेद साहब, आपके लिए फील्ड ओपन है। कम आउट, कोऑर्डिनेट विद पीपल, रीच आउट टू द कांग्रेसमैन, सेनेटर्स, रेज वॉइस फॉर कश्मीर। नोबडी इज गोइंग टू स्टॉप। हमारी कुछ लिमिटेशंस है, लेकिन हम आप लोगों को मोटिवेट करते रहेंगे और सपोर्ट करते रहेंगे। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
एक बात मैं कहूंगा यहाँ पे,
सॉरी मेमन साहब, मेरा मकसद कोई तनकीद नहीं था। मैं सुनता रहता हूँ आपसे भी, और मुझे पता है, मैं चाहता था कि आप लोगों को बताएं कि व्हाट वी आर डूइंग एंड व्हाट वी शुड डू एंड व्हाट कम्युनिटी, जैसे आपने कहा कम्युनिटी को क्या पार्टिसिपेट करनी चाहिए। थैंक यू।
इसमें देखें, जो लोकल कश्मीरी हैं उनको आगे आना पड़ेगा। कश्मीरी द वेरी रिचेस्ट कम्युनिटी ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड, उनको एक डेडिकेट ग्रुप बनाना पड़ेगा जो एवरी कंट्री विजिट करें, हेड ऑफ द कंट्री से मुलाकात करें। जब तक मुकामी कश्मीरी, यहाँ जो लोकल कश्मीरी हैं, वो जब तक पार्टिसिपेट नहीं करेंगे, जब तक ये कामयाबी होगी नहीं। उनका पार्टिसिपेशन करना वर्ल्ड वाइड बहुत जरूरी है, और दे आर इकोनॉमिकली वेरी एस्टेब्लिश्ड पीपल। I am looking, there's a lacking of the cooperation from the international Kashmiri community to move this project forward.
I agree with you। साद खान साहब को टाइम देते वो जवाब दे। साद खान साहब को सवाल
जी, बस लास्ट अनीस साहब, आप भी अगर कोई कहना चाहते हैं 1 मिनट में कह दीजिए, ताकि फिर मैं क्लोजिंग।
जी बिल्कुल, मेरा एक सिंपल सा कमेंट है। मेरी नाक शकल में तो इतना ही आता है कि मैंने पूरी जिंदगी यही देखा है कि हम कश्मीर इशू के अलावा दूसरे इश्यूज पे भी जो है वो अपने कारोबार बंद कर देते हैं। अभी आपने कहा कि इकोनॉमी हमें स्ट्रांग करनी पड़ेगी। हमारे कुछ अनफॉर्चुनेट लीडर्स ने एक वतीरा बना रखा है कि भाई किसी भी मौके पे उनको चाहिए कि लोगों को सड़कों पे ले आए, और वो फिर वायलेंस में जो है वो चेंज हो जाता है, अपने पॉलिटिकल गेन्स करते हैं उनसे। तो हम जो है वो इंटरनेशनल फोरम पे जिस तरह एजुकेटेड लेवल पे हम ये इश्यूज उभारते हैं, इसी तरह हमें अपनी कौम को भी एजुकेट करना पड़ेगा कि भाई सही प्लेटफॉर्म क्या है, और इन इश्यूज को इंटरनेशनल लेवल तक उजागर करने और उनको जो है वो सॉल्व करने के लिए हमें एज अ महज़ब कौम जो है वो इन इश्यूज को उजागर करना पड़ेगा।
जी, थैंक यू सो मच जी। मैं बस कंक्लूजन में यही कहूँगा जो अनीस साहब आपने कहा है, फुली एग्री विद यू। जावेद साहब, आपने भी जो कहा, I have no further comments to offer. It was very beautiful. आपके जो जज्बात थे, जो आपने अशार भी सुनाए। हमाद साहब, again I cannot agree more with you. जो negotiation is the solution of all diplomatic disputes, जैसे आपने कहा कि यूनाइटेड नेशन चार्टर के बाद use of force या threat of use of force is not an option. That's not on the table. जो अभी हमें करना है वो जाहिर है negotiations को रीस्टार्ट करना है, and that goes to the benefit of Kashmiris। जो हमारा सिलसिला उनके साथ रुका हुआ है, अल्लाह करे ये जल्द से जल्द हमारा बातचीत का बहाल हो। जो बाकी बातें आपने कहीं, मिसाल के तौर पे पॉलिटिकल अकाउंटेबिलिटी की, अगेन देखें, जमहूरियत में पॉलिटिकल अकाउंटेबिलिटी इज थ्रू द पीपल। जो आपने 2-3 कश्मीर कमेटी के चेयरमैनों का नाम लिया, मौजूदा का भी नाम लिया, तो जमहूरियत में अकाउंटेबिलिटी तो होती है। अगले इलेक्शन में अगर वो अच्छा परफॉर्म ना करें तो वो शायद इलेक्ट ना हो सकें। और 2 ऐसे कश्मीर कमेटी के चेयरमैन मैं जानता हूँ, वो टॉप लेवल पॉलिटिशियंस, और वो सब्सिक्वेंटली दे कुडंट विन देयर ओन नेशनल असेंबली सीट। तो जो जमहूरियत की अकाउंटेबिलिटी है, इट्स थ्रू द पीपल, me and you and every Pakistani citizen and Kashmiri citizen. So with these remarks, back to the Honorable Consul General of Pakistan, it was a pleasure being here, and thank you so much all of you for being here despite being working day, and at 10 to 11:30 p.m. it was it requires a great commitment on your part. I'm grateful to you, and I'm grateful to the Honorable Consul General Sahab and Deputy Consul General Sahab for affording me the opportunity to address this webinar. Thank you once again.
Wonderful.
You may give concluding remarks here.
سر آپ کنکلوڈ کرنا چاہیں گے؟
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Asad.
آپ کی آواز سننا چاہیے، ہمیں سننی ہے.
It was really very enlightening, and in a way, I was just recalling my days of as a probationary officer in Foreign Service Academy, when I was tasked, assigned a research paper on Kashmir, and I was lucky enough to get 48 out of 50 marks. And since then, I have not been able to really follow in a way as your presentation has today revived all my knowledge on Kashmir. I think all of us today present, our worthy audience across West Coast, have been very well benefited and have learned new things from your presentation. And I'm very much grateful to you for sparing your valuable time from your heavy engagements. It's now almost now midnight in Pakistan. And thank you very much, my respectable audience, for being a working day even then with us and joining us today, the webinar. Hopefully we will continue our effort and struggle for the freedom of the Kashmir, and we will be raising voice forcefully in future as well for the for the freedom of Kashmir. Thank you very much. Allah bless you all. God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. God bless.
Allah Hafiz.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. Good educational program.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Very nice.
جی
فون اٹھا لیا کریں سر.
اچھا میں اٹھا لوں.